Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Today is the MAPS for Educators Introduction Program webinar, where today we'll be exploring sustainable self-care practices for mental and emotional well-being. My name is Kailen Guggenheim. I am the founder and president of Mindful Awareness Practices, or MAPS, and I will be leading us through today's webinar. But before we do anything at all, before we get into the content for today's presentation, I wanted to invite you all to join me for a brief mindful moment so that we can refocus, regroup, become present for our time here together, and also to give you a bit of a taste of what mindfulness practice is all about, which is what we will be discussing today. So let's begin. If it feels comfortable for you, you can close your eyes. But it's perfectly fine if you prefer to just gaze softly in front of you, whatever's comfortable. And just take a moment to settle in. Arrive in the space that you're in your chair, and in your own body. And perhaps using some points of contact to ground more fully into your body. Maybe feeling your feet on the floor, your sits bones in the chair, perhaps your hands resting in your lap. And now, as you're ready, I'm going to invite you to turn your attention to the breath, just following each breath, not needing to change it in any way, just following the natural rhythm of your breath cycle. One breath in, one breath out, another breath in, and another breath out. And if possible, try to let go of whatever came before, and likewise let go of whatever may be coming up for you later. Just allowing yourself to be here fully, present in this moment, and for this webinar that is about to begin. And lastly, maybe invite a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for yourself for showing up today to learn about ways that you can take care of yourself, take care of those whom you work with, finding some time in your busy day to pause. And after the next breath, when it feels right for you, you can start to reorient back into the space. Open your eyes, maybe move a little bit, wiggle your fingers and toes, just reorienting back to the space you're in, to the screen in front of you. And thank you for participating in that short practice with me. Before we move on, I invite you to just briefly take stock of what that was like for you. Maybe you liked it and you were really able to relax and ground into it, but maybe you didn't. Maybe it felt odd or uncomfortable or strange, and that's totally fine as well. It's really just about becoming aware and familiar with what it's like to pause and take some time for yourself in the day, just beginning to practice that for yourself. So moving on, a brief overview and some housekeeping before we jump into the presentation. So today we have about 30 minutes together where we'll be discussing the topic of educator burnout and the larger implications that this has, the benefits of mindfulness for educators. Then we'll dive into the MAPS for Educators program. And lastly, we'll be ending with a Q&A discussion. So if you do have questions that come up throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the chat. If you look at your Zoom panel at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat button that says the word chat, and there's also a little chat icon. If you click on that, you can type in your question, and I will do my best to get to it at the end. I will also stick on for a few moments at the end of the presentation as well in case any further questions come up. So now that housekeeping is out of the way, I just want to take a brief moment to introduce myself, tell you a bit more about me and my personal connection to this work. So my journey really began as a stressed out high school student. I was fortunate to discover mindfulness as a very powerful tool to help me transform my perspective, reduce stress, and I was really moved and inspired to share this with fellow teenagers. So I approached my school administration, my high school administration, and I asked them if I could do a independent study where I would research adolescent stress and mindfulness and looking into other ways that could help teenagers learn how to cope and navigate those stressful years, and then write a book on it. And lucky for me, they said yes. They paired me with my favorite English teacher. And what ensued was a really transformative experience that really set me on the path towards where I am today. I went on to study clinical psychology, and my master's thesis actually investigated stress and burnout among K through 12 educators and the benefits of mindfulness in this population. So all of that to say that it definitely feels like everything has come full circle to be able to be here with you today to talk about ways that you can reduce stress and burnout as educators using mindfulness and other practices. Certainly a big thank you to educators and the tremendous impact that you have on your students' lives, including myself. So thank you for being here today and for taking the time to learn about these ways to take care of yourself. So that being said, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that working in K through 12 education is stressful, but the research backs that up as well. There's been a lot of studies on this, and there's some pretty staggering statistics. So 51% of educators report experiencing extreme stress levels several days per week, and workplace stress and burnout among K through 12 educators is on the rise. 44% of K through 12 educators reported feeling burned out very often or always, compared to 30% of workers in other industries. So not only is working in education a stressful profession that's only becoming more stressful year by year, but compared to other industries, it is much more stressful as well. And lastly, almost half of educators leave the profession within the first 5 years of entering the classroom due to this stress and burnout. So clearly there is a problem that needs to be addressed. And what is the impact of this? So the stress and burnout, the high levels of stress and burnout among K through 12 educators has an impact, not just on the individual educator, but it extends outward to the school and even the teaching profession as a whole. So on the individual level, this looks like high levels of psychological distress, impaired physical and emotional well-being, reduced job satisfaction, effectiveness, and overall teaching quality, and negative outcomes for student learning in the classroom environment. So we see here, it starts with the individual educator and kind of has this ripple effect outward on the classroom environment, student learning outcomes, and then even the overall school environment. So clearly there is a need to address these rising levels of stress and burnout, which is where mindfulness comes in. So the good news is that a lot of research has also been done on the benefits of mindfulness for educators. And the good news is that this also has an impact in a positive way on both the individual educator and the larger system. So what this looks like on the individual educator is enhanced personal well-being and job satisfaction, increased levels of emotion regulation and mindfulness, and lower levels of psychological distress and emotional exhaustion, which are components of burnout. And then again, extending outward, in terms of the impacts on the school and the overall teaching profession. Mindfulness leads to enhanced emotional awareness to relate with students more effectively, increased capacity to be attentive and responsive to student needs, and improved classroom management abilities. So again, there is a silver lining that the positive impact has this ripple effect outward as well. So that's where we come in with the MAPS for Educators program. So the MAPS for Educators program is a comprehensive approach to stress management for teachers, as well as others working within K through 12 education. And it's taught by industry experts, many of whom have had years of classroom experience. So our guiding principle, or one of our guiding principles, is that we want our program to be as relatable and easily integratable into your life as possible. And so we partnered with people who know what your day-to-day experience is like. They are fellow educators. They know the unique sources of stress that you go through, and therefore have helpful tools to get you through the school day and directly relate to your experience. And these courses are delivered through self-paced learning modules that are rooted in mindfulness, positive psychology, and self-compassion, as well as a bonus module on diversity, equity, inclusion. And so these three topics of mindfulness, positive psychology, and self-compassion, which we call our three pillars, are heavily grounded in research. So all of the theories, practices, tools, exercises that you're exposed to from these three domains are heavily backed by research. And this provides not just a very rich experiential learning experience, but it also has a lot of academic integrity. So it's a very comprehensive program. And in this program, participants learn how to create sustainable rituals for self-care, how to cultivate resilience, and also the opportunity to explore various mindful awareness practices. So again, we provide an array of different practices from these three different fields so that you can find what resonates with you, find what's going to be easily integratable into your life, and do it in a way that will actually make a difference. So another guiding principle of our program is that this is for you. You as educators give so much to others. Now is the time to give to you. So the MAPS for Educators program is intended first and foremost for the personal benefit of educators. It is not another thing to do on your to-do list, to do for your classroom. We do not teach you how to teach this to your students. There is no other end goal in mind other than to take care of you. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? So it starts with you. That being said, we do believe that by being more resilient, present, inclusive, compassionate individuals, educators will just organically impact their students, the classroom, and even the overall school environment in a positive way. Again, going back to this ripple effect, that it starts with the individual, but it definitely permeates outward. But first and foremost, this is something for you. So taking a bit of a closer look at our MAPS for Educators program, it consists of about 12 hours of video content and practice exercises focusing on various topics within mindfulness, positive psychology, and self-compassion. Just to shout out some of the topics we cover: cultivating resilience, passion, meaning, and accomplishment, and caring for the caregiver. And one of the special aspects of this program is that implementation is fully customizable. So it can be delivered through designated development or training days. So you can do it as part of a professional development initiative with other teachers or, an entire group in your school, or it can be delivered completely in a self-paced format that individual educators can go through the program completely at their own pace. So again, we try to make it as accessible and easily integratable into your lives as possible. So that being said, I've shared quite a bit of information about the program, but I think the best way to really understand it is to see it for yourselves. So I'm going to demonstrate our learning platform and show a few excerpts from the MAPS for Educators program. So just bear with me one moment while I navigate over to the platform and give you an idea of what it's all about. Okay. So here is our learning platform. All of the content is divided into 12 modules that consist of about 1 hour worth of video that is then further broken down into shorter segments. The idea being that we really want the information to be digestible, to be, again, easily integratable. So you see here, for example, this video is under 4 minutes long. You could watch it, go grade papers, go cook dinner, do what you need to do, and then come back and watch another one. So that's the structure of the program. And each module is further followed by a resource library. So if you find a practice or exercise that really resonates with you throughout the module content, you can easily go back in this library, this resource library, and find that particular practice to integrate into your life, to practice it before moving on to the next module, or make it a daily practice. We try to make it, again, as easy to find as possible. So I'm going to share 2 clips with you from 2 different modules, so that way you can get a sense for the different type of content we deliver, as well as the different instructors that we have. The first one that I'd like to show you is from Module 1, which is an introduction to well-being. And this video is delivered by Crystal McCreary. She is an educator based in New York City. She teaches health, education, mindfulness, and yoga to students. and she is going to be telling you about ways that we can use inner resources to resource ourselves.
So Parker Palmer, who is an academic and an educator, has a wonderful quote that speaks to this concept of exploring a full array of practices to support educators in particular with self-care. And he said, "We need to open a new frontier in our exploration of good teaching, the inner landscape of a teacher's life. To chart the landscape fully, 3 important paths must be taken: intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, and none can be ignored." Now, I personally would add to that physical as well. But just consider that what he's saying is that as whole human beings, right, who are also educating, our aim is to educate whole human beings. In order to do that in an authentic way, we really do need to know who we are, right, fully and completely. So part of this skill that we're going to look at, which is resourcing ourselves, right? Learning how to tap our resources to support us navigate stress, is to recognize, first of all, that we have resources, right? And I'm going to offer that we have 2 different categories of resources. So we have resources that are found internally, and those would include our body, right? Our body is a resource. We can use our body, change what our body is doing to literally change the way we feel. We can shift our mental state, right? I think many of us can relate to the idea of just having like a constant narrative that's on repeat. Sometimes those narratives support us, sometimes they totally break us down. And just by shifting like our self-talk, right, we can shift our mental state. Of course, mindfulness is a practice that is all about like becoming aware of what is happening in our mind, right? This is an internal resource as well. We also have our breath, right? And in a moment, we'll talk about why in many ways this is the most powerful inner resource we have to support us to be well. But again, it's internal, right? We carry it with us. It's with us all the time. And then the last inner resource to consider would be our heart, right? Or a sense of, for lack of a better expression, connecting to what's really true for you and what's, what grows from a loving place, right? This sort of heart-centered place, right? An empathetic, compassionate place. That is an internal resource as well.
Okay, great. So I'm now going to move us over to module 6, which is our positive psychology module, also highlighting well-being. And we are going to hear from Dan Lerner. He is a professor out of NYU. He teaches the most popular course there called The Science of Happiness. And he is going to be discussing a concept called PERMA, which is a framework for lifelong happiness.
PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. The P stands for positive emotions, pleasant feelings, whether they're hedonistic or richer than that, positive emotions. The E stands for engagement. Engagement is when you get caught up in things because you find them so interesting. If you've ever heard the term being in flow or being in the zone, that's engagement. When you're doing something and you look at your watch and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd the time go? It's been 3 hours. You don't hear your phone go off. That's engagement. The R is for relationships, positive relationships, healthy relationships. The M is for meaning. We'll define that as a connection to something larger than yourself. And the A is for accomplishment or achievement, right? Getting things done. And that could be a big A, where it's, I want to end up being the principal of a school, and now I've realized that dream. Or it could be the small A, which is, today I set out to teach well, go grocery shopping, and have dinner with my family. Check, check, check. Think of PERMA like a series of buckets where in order to thrive, you always have to have a drop in each one of them. They don't need to be overflowing, but you need to have a little bit in each one.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So just bear with me one more moment. I'm going to navigate us back over to the presentation. Okay, so we're very proud of our Maps for Educators program. I'm glad I got to show you an excerpt from it today. And we've also had a tremendous amount of positive feedback from participants who have gone through the program. They've written in to tell us how transformative it's been, which is always very meaningful to hear. So just to share, just to highlight some of that feedback with you today, I'll read the one in orange. This is from Leah S. She said that the MAPS program empowered participants to look at life from a different lens with tools to face the uncertainties in the classroom and beyond. So again, this is really heartwarming to hear that our program has the intended impact, not just on educators' professional lives in the classroom, but on their personal lives as well. So in addition to this 12-module program that we've been discussing, we do also offer professional development workshops ranging in length from 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. Some of the topics that we cover are communicating mindfully, 5 ways to add mindfulness to the school day, and an introduction to mindfulness for educators. And depending on which topic you select, these can be delivered either live online, in person, or pre-recorded on demand. In addition to our offerings for educators, we do also have programs for students. So as you can see here, there are 3 student-facing programs. We have our college prep program, which is intended for college-bound students, preparing them for the stresses that may arise during the college application process, preparing to go away to school, and then also what they might anticipate when they transition to life on campus. Then we have the MAPS for Teens program, which is intended for students in grades 7 through 11. And lastly, our program for student athletes. So in a room full of educators, I would be remiss if I did not show my references. So here is the list of studies that I referenced throughout the presentation. If you are interested in going a bit deeper into the research yourself, let me know, and I would happily send you over these sources. And that concludes our presentation for today. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I will be staying on for a moment or two to see if anyone has any questions. But in the meantime, if you're not staying for the Q&A, I'd like to thank you again for joining us for this session to learn more about MAPS for educators. And we would love to work with you to help you and the educators you work with. So please do reach out to us using the contact information on the screen. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. For those of you who are sticking around, I'm going to move over to the chat now to see if any questions came in throughout the presentation. And again, we'll be staying on for a minute or two for any lingering questions that may trickle in. So as of now, I don't see any questions, but I'll give it a minute or so. All right, well, it looks like we don't have any questions at the moment, but that being said, if something does come up for you after today's presentation, please do get in touch and we'd be happy to get you that information. So thank you so much again for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.